Hi folks, welcome to the channel. I'm Jim. Good to be back with you. I'm going to do a Friday reading update. I finished a couple books this week, so I figured I would get caught up with that and share also what I'm currently reading. First of all, a heartfelt thank you to viewers who responded to my last video, which was an elegy to my dog Alfie. Your kind words were so supportive, and I'm really lucky to have viewers like you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really does make a difference. I wanted to do a quick video here. I'm sort of like slowly treading back into the water. The two books I finished this week were Waterworks, The Waterworks by E.L. Doctorow, and also Pruce Way, A Field Guide to In Search of Lost Time. This one I finished first, but I want to talk about this one right now. So the E.L. Doctorow, here is his image. This book was published in the 90s, and I mentioned this in my last reading update that I had started it. And I found this to be a really satisfying book, much to my surprise. I found this in a little free library. I used to have this on the shelf, I think in a paperback edition that I must have picked up at a library sale somewhere, and I never read it, and I got rid of it. But this one was a little free library find in hardcover, and I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Very satisfying novel. It's a finely woven tapestry of New York City. Doctorow is very much a New York City author. He knows the city, he knows its history, he revels in it, and you really get a sense for New York City in a particular historical time period. In this case would be the early 1870s, 1860s, 1870s, so post-Civil War America, which plays a role here. It's also the Boss Tweed, Tammany Hall era of New York City history, and that figures prominently in the book. It's narrated in a very authentically old-fashioned kind of Victorian, late Victorian voice by a newspaperman whose last name is McElvain, and he's a newspaper editor. And he eventually, in the novel, teams up with a police officer or police investigator to investigate the disappearance of Martin Pemberton, who was a freelancer for McElvain. And this Martin Pemberton, before he disappeared, believed that his deceased father, who disowned him, was actually not dead. He saw him in a cab or a carriage, much like you see on the cover here. And the plot dallies with the mystery genre the farther along it goes. It's a bit of a detective story too. That detective work is a lot of fun to follow. So you've got the investigative reporter and you have the police investigator. They are joining forces. And there were certain chapters in here that were real page turners for an E.L. Doctorow novel. I cannot spoil the outcomes and the discoveries. I think if you haven't read the book, that would not be fair. That part of the pleasure in reading this was to follow the twists and turns. For me, the plot twists were really enjoyably unexpected. And more macabre than I anticipated. It gets dark and it gets weird towards the end. And I was even picking up some steampunk vibes. I'm not like a particular fan of the genre, steampunk. Not that I'm not a fan, I just don't know enough about it, but I'm aware of what steampunk is. And this had that taste at certain moments later on in the book. I also was getting some H.G. Wells vibes in terms of like the direction of the book. Other reviewers have compared it to a bit of Edgar Allan Poe. You can see that in there. And another author that was mentioned as a analog would be Wilkie Collins. Haven't read Wilkie Collins, so I can't comment on that. Planning to read Wilkie Collins, but Anyway, it's in that kind of late Victorian sort of realm, and I can't give too much away, but it was very it was sort of disturbing what was found, but also really fascinating. And ultimately the mysteries are solved and everything's tied up by the end of the book in a pretty satisfying way. And I would say setting in this book, the New York City setting, is definitely a strong point. I think it's something that E.L. Doctorow is really effective at. It's his wheelhouse. He evokes New York City. It's a city on the move. It's raucous and it's mighty. It's exciting. It's dangerous. It's building up. And it's also building out, like spreading, up Manhattan Island. And it's rife with amorality and grift and grit. A really, really textured portrayal of New York City in the early 1870s, that Boss Tweed era. I enjoyed the Waterworks far more than I thought I would. It gives you a stable point of view. It's narrated in the first person by the newspaper man. It's a credible historical narrative voice, I think. It feels like it belongs in that time period. There's a strong sense of place to it, a good sense of what it must have been like to live in this active and corrupt time period of Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall. And there are some heady themes to think about, too, which I always appreciate about a good novel. And, one of those themes, without giving too much away, is it's about the hunger to live on, to live forever, like to kind of quest for eternal life, no matter what it costs in treasure or in moral scruples, whatever it takes. You even have a kind of mad scientist who figures in this book as well, so it's sort of following into that, like, kind of, again, the sort of the steampunk, gothic, 19th century, early sci-fi type thing. It's not a sci-fi novel by any means, but it's a historical novel, but it touches on those genres a little bit, plus the mystery genre. So I can't give you more without spoiling it. I just don't really want to do that. You're welcome to read reviews online if you do want to find out more about the book. But let me know if you've read this one yourself and what you thought of it. So today, I think I've read 4 Doctorow novels: Ragtime, Loon Lake, Homer and Langley, and The Waterworks. I would rank The Waterworks right up there with Ragtime as my favorites, at the top of the list. And it makes me want to read more E.L. Doctorow. We have 1 or 2 of his books on the shelf still, so I think those will be a natural starting point for me. But yeah, good big thumbs up on this one. A surprise. I fell into this, found it in a Little Free Library. It's going to go back to the Little Free Library. I'm not going to hang on to it. But yeah, really, really like The Waterworks. Let me know what you think in the comments. The other book I finished before that was Pruce Way by Roger Shattuck. So this is literary criticism, and this was it's billed as a field guide to In Search of Lost Time, which I just finished rereading in the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. And it was great to sort of follow on the heels of that completion with a book like this, especially the early chapters. I just kind of wanted to talk to someone about Proust, and Roger Shattuck really knew his Proust. Wrote at least 2 books about Proust, if not 3, maybe more. Like, just really knows it inside out, and that comes across in this. So there's a few different purposes at work in this book, and I give it a sort of like a modified thumbs up. I think I really preferred the early chapters the most. So you have, let me check the contents here. You have the introduction, which is called A Sense of Life. You have like a bit of a biographical resume on Proust. And You have a chapter on the work and its author, so more biographical criticism there. And then chapter 2 is how to read a roman fleuve, which was really good. So it's like a primer for, if you've not read Proust before, these early chapters I think are really useful. And then you get into the comic vision of Proust, which I totally agreed with him on. Like he's great at pointing out the how much humor is in the novel and where it appears and what patterns he uses. Also, a chapter on Proust's complaint, and with subtitles called "False Sense: From Places to People, the Infirmity in My Nature, Soul Error, and the Paradox of Consciousness." So the deeper he goes in here, he gets more into some of the themes in the novel. Then a chapter on Proust's binoculars, memory, and recognition, how much Proust used optical metaphors and the science of optics in the book. Then a chapter on art and idolatry, a chapter on the structure of sheer length, so taking up the fact that this is such a long novel and what to do about that. And does the work have a form? He thinks it does, absolutely. A chapter on continuing disputes, including, too much of Proust, the challenge of translation, filming the unfilmable, time and space, intelligence versus sensibility, Proust's wager, and experimental faith. All those were interesting subchapters. And then Reading for Your Life is the last chapter, and a coda on Proust's mysterious laws of thought with 3 appendixes after that, and a select bibliography. So it's a really useful book. I did wear out a little bit by about halfway through and towards the end where it got real heady. It was more highbrow literary criticism. Nothing against that. I just think maybe I was like a little oversaturated by that point. Maybe I was reading it a little too quickly to get through it. But I did find this to be a really useful volume. I'll probably keep it for a while. Like when I launch back into Proust again, I might want to have this by my side. I'm not sure I'll keep it forever, but it's definitely glad I got it. I found this at a used bookshop. And the little subchapter he had about films of Proust, this is a sidebar. Like I've watched a couple of these films he talked about, and a third one that he didn't talk about. So let me just take this little detour about that. So the first film is called Swan in Love, and I think it was made in the 1980s. You can find it on Criterion Channel, and it stars Jeremy Irons as Charles Swan. And Shattuck sort of slammed that film. In general, his thesis is like Proust is really hard to adapt to film. And then he shows you why by doing these extended film reviews. Swan in Love, I liked it more than he did. I thought it was good costume drama. I sort of thought the way they sort of adapted the plot of Swan in Love, and they kind of fed in some other plot points from later volumes when Swan is older and so forth. I thought it was pretty well done, and it was sensual. There were good erotic scenes, and it really got across the themes of jealousy and possessiveness that are part of that story. He didn't like it as much as I did. And then the other film is called, I just got this film on DVD. I had to order it on eBay because I couldn't find anywhere that streams it. And it's called, okay, I found it. So the title of this film, released in 1999, is Time Regained, directed in Paris by the Chilean Raul Ruiz. And this was a kind of riff on the last volume of In Search of Lost Time, but the character of Proust, the author, is on his deathbed at the beginning of the film. And it's almost like he's engaging with all the characters that he's created. and then the film becomes this sort of modernistic or postmodernist panoply of scenes from the book, like that come in and out in very associative stream of consciousness order, and it's very hard to follow, as he points out. But it has some really big name actors in it, like Catherine Deneuve and John Malkovich. I thought did a fabulous job as the Baron de Charlus. And the guy they got to play Marcel Proust is like a spitting image of Marcel Proust. They really nailed that. And it has very high production values. It's a pretty film to look at, but it's a very difficult film to follow. Like, even if you've read the novel, you might feel like you're playing Trivial Pursuit or something to kind of like pick up on everything that's going on. But I rather liked the film, but I accept his criticisms of it. I think he probably liked it a little bit better than Swan in Love, but he has some critical things to say about it too, which were deserved. Like, this is a film that's, you know, if you've not read Marcel Proust, you're going to be like completely lost and probably give up on it. And so, but if you've read Proust, it's kind of fun to watch, but it's also like plot wise, I guess there's a little bit of a plot there, but it is really like more about the atmospherics and the camera movements and the cinematography and the costumes. It does, I think, evoke the look and feel of the novel as I read it. But it's just, you know, hard to follow. And I don't think the film did particularly well, but it was, yeah. So he talks about that one too. And he might talk about a third film, which I didn't see. And then there was a third film that I watched called The Captive. And that's also on Criterion Network. Roger Shattuck doesn't talk about this one, but let me talk about it for a minute, because I want to warn you not to watch this film. It was really, really bad. Oh my goodness. It was an adaptation of the we'll call the narrator Marcel Albertine subplot from the novel. And it was adapted into the modern day, so it's very much about jealousy and possession and, you know, the inscrutability of Albertine. And this film was just flat out bad. Like, you could tell it was done on a very low budget, even though, you know, like, what they had there, like, looked fine, but it was just so limited. You could tell they just didn't have the budget to do anything elaborate. Everything was kind of minimalistic, and boy, was it slow paced. It was even slower paced than reading Marcel Proust. Like, nothing happened. Like, the dialogue in this film could probably fit on like 5 pages of typescript. Like, it was just excruciating. And I didn't even see the very end. I just went up to bed and like my wife watched it, and, you know, like, couldn't really make sense of the ending exactly, but just brutal. It shouldn't be on Criterion Channel, in my opinion. But I'll mention it in case some of you have a higher tolerance for slow-paced filmmaking than I do. But I thought the acting was pretty weak. I mean, the characters look fine, but just like the acting was, yeah, trying to flush that one. I preferred both the other films much more than that one. So anyway, that's Pruce Way, Roger Shattuck. Again, the beginning chapters I think are better than the later chapters, which get a bit into the weeds. But if you've never read Proust before and you're tempted and you want a little bit of a guide to help you get started, read the early chapters on this one and then save the later chapters for after you've read the whole thing. And I think you'll be in better shape. Okay, so those are the books that I completed. I'll just dip into a few books that I'm actively reading. S by John Updike. It's going to be more of a front burner one right now. I just read a little bit of that this week, not too far. This has been the main focus now is Edward Abbey's Desert Solitaire, which I'll have more to say about this after I finish it, but it is creative nonfiction, sort of in the tradition of people like Henry David Thoreau, Walden, and Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard. And boy, does he take you to the canyonlands of Utah. Like, it is so vivid, but it's a very prickly, gnarly, sometimes unsettling book too. But he covers a lot of ground, not just about nature, but about the culture and about America and about the national park system and all the rest. So there's that. Still reading in the Suetonius, the life of Nero. I'm nearing the end of that. He was quite the character. I've made some more progress in Images by Ingmar Bergman, his artistic memoir. Really liking this. It has the photography, which is lots of stills from the films, but also just images of the artist working with the actors and so forth. It's really good stuff. And he's a real fascinating artist to me. So I'd like to finish this one soon. And now that I'm done those other two books, I have more time to read these. I am going to get back to my Plutarch. I'm reading the life of Lycurgus and Numa Pompilius from this Franklin Library edition. This is the Dryden translation. And then I'll switch over to one of my great book sets and read the life of Alexander and Caesar again. And I'll be prepping a couple videos for the year one reading plan, Great Books series, Great Ideas series. And then lastly, I just started this today, which is Clea by Lawrence Durrell. It's been an intention of mine to get back to Lawrence Durrell this summer and finish the Alexandria Quartet for the first time. This is the final volume in the quartet. Just started it today, so I don't have anything to say about it, but I just like Lawrence Durrell's writing style. He does it for me, so I'm looking forward to reading it. I think it'll be a pretty quick read, too. This is, in this edition, it's only 287 pages. So I'm hoping it doesn't take me too long. That is my reading update. What have you guys been reading? Do you have any reactions to these books and films I talked about? What do you think of Doctorow? What do you think of Ryder Shattuck? If you've seen those films, Swan in Love, Time Regained, The Captive. Do you have any other Proust films to recommend that I don't know about? And also any of the other titles here. Weigh in the comments, ask questions. Always like to get a good back and forth discussion going there. Thanks for watching. I hope to be back again soon. My daughter's coming in from Vermont for a quick visit, so I'm really looking forward to that this weekend. And on the other side of that, maybe I'll have another video. Fingers crossed. Be well. Peace and love to everybody. Bye-bye.